episode 548, How to Give Educators Choice in Their Professional Development.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Do you have a DonorsChoose.org project that needs funding? Today's sponsor is Advancement Courses, and they are donating 10% of their sales until September 27th to DonorsChoose.org projects. And also, if you're needing professional development, you get 20% off their 200 plus online courses using the special code just for 10-Minute Teacher listeners. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn more. How do we give educators choice in their professional development? We know we're supposed to give our students choices, but what about educators? Why do educators all have to sit through the same PD? Well, Principal Meredith Akers from Texas has some great ideas for us. Now, Meredith, last time you were on the show, you were assistant principal, and now you're principal. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is such an honor to serve at Rennell Elementary.
Okay, so what do you do to give your teachers choices in professional development?
Well, last year was my first year as principal, and my teachers throughout the school year had been telling me, I had one teacher that said, I see you on Twitter all the time. I wish you could teach me a little bit about Twitter. And I had another teacher that came up to me and said, hey, the next time we have a professional development, can you just share some Google tips and tricks, like just some basics? And then I had another teacher that said, I wish I knew more about how to use video in my lessons. And as I sat trying to put together a professional development day that we had in January with no students, I thought about how many teachers in the room already know about Twitter. And then how many teachers in the room would already know the Google tips and tricks basics. And so I thought, how can I give these teachers choice? So I sat down and recorded myself, made a video of myself talking through those Twitter how-tos. Then I made a separate video talking about here's the Google tips and tricks. And I made a third video of this is how you could record yourself like this to have a video lesson. And then I went back through and embedded those videos into Google Slides. That way I could tell my teachers, hey, instead of me standing up in front of you and you sitting through something you already know or that you're not interested in, because there might be someone who's not interested in one of those topics, I want you to go back and choose what you'd like to learn about today, spend the time on what you'd like to learn about and go at your own pace. I told them, hey, if you finish early, work on something else that you need to work on in your room. But at the end of the day, we're going to come back together. And we had a mic drop moment and everybody shared, what's your mic drop moment? Something amazing that you learned that you're excited to share. And we all shared and dropped a fake mic just to be silly and had a great time learning from each other's ahas.
Okay, so what was the feedback from the teachers about that day?
The feedback was unbelievable. The teachers really appreciated that I didn't make them sit through something that, one, they'd already learned before, or two, they weren't interested in. And then three, the feedback that I loved the most was, even though I told them, you only have to learn about one of the three topics, watch one of my videos. Almost all of them that I spoke to said, well, after I watched the Google one, then I went back and watched half of the Twitter one because I didn't know if I knew all the Twitter tips. So I think knowing that they were allowed to move at their own pace, they were willing to invest more time and learn even more. They went above and beyond, which made me a happy principal.
Yes. And do you think it had any impact in the classroom?
I think so. I saw some teachers that started doing those video lessons within my video lessons that I had on the Google slide where it was embedded. Teachers had a listing. I went through and each time I kind of changed topics, I put the minutes and seconds. So if it was, I need to set up my Twitter account, you're going to go to 0.00. If I just need to know how to use hashtags, I can go to 1 minute and 32 seconds. And I did see one of my teachers use that for a review for her students, telling them exactly where they could go if they needed a specific review, what they needed to review.
So will you do it again this year?
I will absolutely do it again this year. I don't know when or what time of year, but I know when it comes to a professional development where I know some teachers in the room already know this or aren't interested, then I want to give them choice so they're not sitting there bored or wasting their time.
So what would you do differently?
If I had the chance to do it over again, I think I might have them, before we come back for our mic drop moment, I think I might have them talk with their teams first and then go back and give them one more opportunity to watch something different, because that's something I think we waited till the very end of the day to share. And so I think if they'd shared sooner with each other, they might go, okay, now I want to go learn about that because I didn't. So give them that chance to, okay, now you have 5 more minutes to go learn a little bit more if you want to.
Okay, so Meredith, you also have some other ways you've given your teachers choice. What's your other way?
I have. I personally listen to podcasts all the time for my personal development. I love to listen to your podcast on my morning runs. I listen to Weston Kieschnick's podcast. I love that one. Teaching Keating. There's so many I listen to, and I wanted my teachers to benefit from listening to it, but also to get PD credit. So I created a choice board that had podcasts that I had already listened to the episode, and I knew it was a good episode. I was making some good suggestions for them. So I gave 6 or 7 suggestions of podcasts and then even episodes that I recommended to teachers. And then if they listened to one, all they had to do to get credit was fill out a really simple Google form for me saying, this is what I listened to, and this is a key takeaway that I had from it. And then I trusted them that, hey, you really did listen to that. You got a key takeaway. I looked at the time of the podcast and gave them credit in increments of an hour at a time for listening to those podcasts.
Now, did they do this over the course of like a semester or a quarter, or how did it work?
Great question. So I opened it up in the second semester because I feel like that's the time of year when it's hard to add one more thing to our plates. And listening to podcasts is easy to fit in. You know, you can do it in your car. You can do it on your run. You don't have to go somewhere or stay late after school. So we did it for the entire second semester last school year. And I actually did it at my school when I was an assistant principal. We did the same thing in the second semester as a way to learn and grow when you don't feel like you have time to fit it in. It's a way to easily fit it in and really benefit and learn and grow.
So what kind of feedback did you get from your teachers there?
The teachers that listened absolutely loved it and have continued to listen to podcasts. Even though I'm currently over the summer, I didn't offer any credit, but they've already said, are you going to offer it again? I said, absolutely. And I'll even give you new suggestions because I think it opened up everybody's eyes to, hey, here's a different PD. Those teachers that already listened to podcasts, because I offered a menu, they got to find a new podcast that maybe they hadn't heard of before.
Yeah, and iTunes has just changed the category, so it may get a little trickier to find this stuff for teacher PD.
Right.
They got rid of the K-12 category and they got rid of the ed tech category, which I'm kind of bummed about both of those.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not sure if people are going to go to the how-to or the self-help sections of education. I've even debated which one do I list the show under because it really fit well under ed tech and K-12. But anyway, so what recommendations do you have for principals or leaders who want to offer podcast PD credit for their staff?
I would say definitely give them a list of somewhere to start, because if you just say, go listen to a podcast, you don't really know what people are listening to. So if you give them a list of somewhere to start, then you kind of know, hey, these are good podcasts. And if you need a list, a lot of people have made lists, but feel free to go to my website at meredithakers.com and grab my podcast PD. Casey Bell has made one similar to mine. A lot of people have made great options of choices, but then make sure you do keep that accountability there and say, hey, turn something into me. Please don't make them write a whole hour-long paragraph. But if you just say, hey, what'd you listen to? What's something you learned that you're going to implement? My favorite part is then just following up with a conversation to say, hey, I saw that you listened to the 10-minute teacher. What'd you think about those grading guidelines that they suggested? And then you get to have a great conversation in the hallway too.
And you inspired me, Meredith, so I'm giving you total credit for this. I saw what you were doing, and Casey Bell had mentioned, also what you were doing. And I've designed sort of a podcast PD template takeaway that people can tweak and use for their school. But then also I'm adding challenges, practical challenges to each podcast episode so that you can have, an idea of something real you can do in your classroom. Because here's the thing, we want to learn, but it's all about application, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you listen and do nothing with it, what was the point?
Yeah. And we all want to work on the craft. My principal, when we started the year, he said, decide, are you going to work on this craft of being an amazing educator? And I'm like, yeah, I'm an artisan. I'm going to work on it. I
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay. Meredith Akers, she has a lot of resources. I will link in the show notes to the podcast PD that kind of started all of this conversation. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you so much for having me, Vicki.
From now until September 28th, Advancement Courses, an online provider of professional development for K-12 teachers, is donating 10% of their sales to funding DonorsChoose.org projects. Go to coolcatteacher.com/give to submit your project for consideration. And if you need some awesome PD, 10-Minute Teacher listeners get 20% off any online courses with the code COOL20. With this coupon, a 3 grad credit course for continuing education, salary advancement, or recertification is only $359. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat to learn more and use the code COOL20 to get your discount. Never stop learning. So educators, you've heard Meredith talk today about giving teachers choice. So why don't you start the conversation? That's your challenge for today. Share today's show with someone in your district or your principal and ask what they think. Suggest having a book group, or I have seen my leaders do at my school, email the teachers and ask for their feedback and what they would like to see in professional development. You know, it's not a choice that we need to innovate. We all need to innovate. And if you innovate like I do, and I encourage our teachers to do, we innovate like a turtle. We make slow progress forward, which actually turns into pretty fast progress when you add it all together. But start the conversations. Teachers do need choice. We need to model the kind of teaching that we want for our students with our teachers in our buildings as well, so that we can inspire that kind of change in the classroom. Because remember, the classroom where teachers go is their professional development, and we kind of want that to be a laboratory of learning so they can see demonstrated in their learning the kind of teaching they need to do. Don't lecture to teachers and say, oh, but don't do this in your classroom. That's kind of being a hypocrite, isn't it? So let's talk about giving choice, and Meredith's given us some great ideas to start.